Hello and welcome to the program. We're currently at the Kyiv Media Week 2018, the key media event in Ukraine this year. And we're joined today by Max Howard, film producer. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So first question, you're here for the Kyiv Media Week. You gave a speech earlier. What were the main themes?
Well, I took the theme of So You Want to Be a Producer, and literally want to be. And I just took people through what it takes to make particularly an animated film, which is my background. It's not live action, although there's many crossovers. And we just talked about everything from getting the story right, to raising money, to making the film, to getting it distributed, going to different film markets, and then ultimately, how does the money come back? How does the money come back to the investor? How do you. But it seemed to go well, and I had a great audience and I had some fantastic questions afterwards. So I've had a very nice morning.
Would you say it's harder to pitch an animation movie or a movie?
I think it's the same. I mean, people always think, there must be a difference, but I think animation allows you to do different things because it's your imagination. You can create any image you like. But the rules of storytelling are the same: beginning, middle, and end. You've got to bring the audience in. You've got to create engaging characters. You've got to make the audience care what happens to those characters. And that's essentially what we discussed this morning was how does that work? Often people can't decide the core idea of a film. I'm a believer that you should be able to pitch an idea for a film in just a few words, and it's not you're telling the whole story, but you do understand the essence of the story, and that's what all great movies are. They have something it's about, and then you take them on a journey, but your interest is in the core idea.
No, that's interesting that you raise the idea of storytelling, because Ukraine is moving towards this market of animation. So last year, The Stolen Princess. This year, Mafka is going out, and next year. And Mafka, for example, is deeply linked and rooted into the Ukrainian fairy tales story. Would you say that there is a new market here, a new trend in that kind of fairy tale?
Well, I think you could call it a rediscovered trend, because there's always been great history of animation in Ukraine. It's not new to Ukraine. I think there's a rediscovering of it, a celebration of it, and a realization now that the marketplace is global. And although, English-speaking United States filmmakers are dominant in the marketplace, nevertheless, I don't think it's exclusive. We've got so many new platforms, and we have talked about that, Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. And so it's just about creating a great story and then getting to the right people. But technically, artistically, Ukraine has great artists here. I first came here, 7 years ago, maybe, for the Krok Animation Festival. That was my introduction to Kyiv. So usually I come to the city and then I get on a boat and I go all the way down the Dnipro, to the Black Sea, and every day we watch movies. In fact, it was a workshop that I did way back then.
It's quite a nice workshop.
Just talking about, what a workshop, and what a way to see the country. It was lovely, and I got this great sense of this passion for storytelling, but through animation. And then I did the Krok Festival again the following year, but this time it was in Russia. So we went, and then following that, I was invited to work with a local studio here on developing an animated feature film, and have done so. The film is yet to be made, because at the very moment that the film was going forward, there were some struggles here, which I was here for those struggles. I was here at the beginning of it, and my local producers here said, Max, you got to go. We hope we'll bring you back, but you should leave. So I went back, and then for all sorts of reasons, because of course the economy completely changed, the financing for the film went away. I'm hoping that will all come back, because certainly I think you could make an even better film than we could have made back then, because there's a vibrancy here, there's an energy here, and there's a great artistic community here, so they're capable of making a great film.
So would you say there is an emerging aesthetic, Ukrainian aesthetic?
I'd call it rediscovering, personally.
Yeah,
I know that, I understand the history of Ukraine. Ukraine's one of those territories, and it's been part of this country, then it's been part of that country, and independence is relatively new, or 1991 or something around that period. But I don't think it's not a new nation. You just feel it's now celebrating its roots, its language, its food, that it's not part of something else. It's a unique country. And I think that takes a generation or two for the people to realize that, that they are themselves. They're not part of something else, and you can feel it here.
That's interesting that you raised this idea of rediscovering the country's roots. Because the country is going through tough times now. There's a war, and after the revolution, the economy collapsed. And not to fall for Ukraine, not to fall to the trap of just doing patriotic movies and still, keep this creative.
Well, I think that's a struggle for anybody. I mean, I think films are great when they tackle a subject matter, but we have to remember that when an audience parts with their money, and we must never forget the audience when we make our films. That's who we make them for. But they work hard, they earn money, and they decide to spend it on you. They decide to go to the cinema, or maybe they watch it online and pay for it. But they decide to spend their money. What do they want? They want entertainment. That doesn't mean that they want to be talked down to, that the stories have to be simple. No, they want to be inspired, and they want to be told great stories. They don't want. We have to be careful. Let's use the word propaganda. It can't be self-serving. I mean, I always think, if you really want to move somebody, emotionally move an audience, if you make them cry first, or I'll reverse that. If you make them laugh first, then you can make them cry, because you're bringing them in, you're making them care. So, you can set a movie in any backdrop, but the heart of the movie has to have a theme that people can respond to. And it has to have characters that you care about. And what we're learning in our smaller world, and we are a small world now. I don't think of a box office now. I mean the whole world. I mean everything we do. We're so much more aware of other countries, and that's because of the internet. And it's just that when you make a film, you really are easily reaching a global audience, and that's where I see Ukraine's strength. It's an export. It's not about entertaining local audiences. Find stories. Yes, they can have. It doesn't matter whether they have a Ukrainian theme or not. It just got to be great stories. They can be set in Ukraine, set in ancient times. There are great ancient stories here, as there are in all cultures. What we find in all of those stories, and it could be. I work a lot in China, or I go all over the world. I find that a lot of the stories have very similar themes.
Which are?
Well, themes of keeping your word, don't judge a book by its cover, which would be the sort of Beauty and the Beast, or a Cinderella-style story where, somebody's put upon and not allowed their own personal freedom, often the themes of freedom and self-expression. These themes exist in all our societies, and audiences get that. So you could make a film here quite easily and have it entertain American children, or I don't think you do it as you have a language issue, I must say, which is neither right or wrong. It's just English-speaking audiences are used to seeing
in English.
Yes. Not dubbed. Mm-hmm. Dubbing, they find in other countries, they're used to having films dubbed. So but that's the constraint. But other than that, the themes and stories, the one I was developing here with a local studio, it wasn't. The film could have been set anywhere in the world. The theme was fantastic, such a clever story. And you could see it entertaining people. And what I wanted for that studio, and I still do want for Ukraine, and in terms of the animation industry, is when a film comes out, you go and see it. You just go and see it as a film. You enjoy it. You think it's fantastic. Later on, or perhaps on the making of, perhaps there's a film about how and where the film was made and all the challenges of the filmmakers. That's where you discover that it was made in Ukraine. It was made in Kyiv. It's irrelevant to the entertainment because it doesn't matter to the audiences that are seeing it. But it's interesting when someone says, "Where was this film made?" and you say it was made in Ukraine. No, really. And so then it's an interesting story. Yeah. It's going at things indirectly, because as soon as you start self-promoting, there is a danger there that you're losing sight of what you're trying to achieve.
Now, you talked about Netflix. You talked about this whole platform. Would you say that the film industry can resist that kind of wave of Netflix platforms, of internet platform? Does it have to adapt? How can it adapt?
Oh, it adapts. It adapts. it's definitely a new universe. I think for the independent filmmaker, I think for filmmakers here, I think that's exciting. It's no longer, the film industry is no longer controlled by a few studios. Netflix is now a very powerful player. They're creating, I mean, there's some wonderful work on television. I'm not talking animation, I'm talking, you know, the way in which television is now shown, these wonderful epic stories that television used to be, that you used to have at the beginning, the middle, and the end in every episode. You couldn't have anything. Now, because we can watch programming when we want to, the freedom of that, the freedom the audience now has, the control they have, that they like a series and they watch the whole thing. They can watch it in 2 days and never get out of bed and just stay there all day long and watch every one, or as they wish. I think that's fantastic. It also takes away the constraints of the length. In television in particular, the length of an episode had to be precise. Had to be either 7 minutes, this is for children's program, you take 7 minutes, 11 minutes, or 22 minutes, because they're multiples. But they all had to add up to half an hour, which in America is 22 minutes plus the commercials. That's all gone. That gives you a freedom, and I think that reflects across all platforms. And I think it's a very, very positive time for us, and I think it puts the power of watching with the audience. Yeah, I mean, I'm never fearful of people staying at home. I mean, I know we can watch everything at home, but I need never go out, right? I could stay at home. I got a kitchen, right? I've always had a kitchen. I go to restaurants. We eat out. So to anybody who says, yes, I've got a big screen TV at home and it's got best surround sound and everything like that, I say, you've got a kitchen too, haven't you? And they go, yeah. I said, do you eat in all the time? Of course not. And I think it's the same thing. We're social creatures. We like, there's nothing better than being in a movie theater or being in a theater. Because to watch something with other people. To share that experience. Yeah, you can, because there's an atmosphere that's created that's unique. And you don't get that at home. It's fine, you can watch it at home if it suits you. It could be wonderful, but. You're behind certain movies like Roger Rabbit, Aladdin, all these wonderful and legendary animation movie. So you saw animation change. What can you foresee? What can you predict, if you can predict some trends in animation? Yeah. Well, the change for us, has happened, or one of the big changes, which is, well, we've talked about the delivery platforms, but in terms of going from hand-drawn to computer, not computer-made, because it's still an artist, but that was a huge change. And the change it allowed us was to move the camera, because if you have a two-dimensional piece of artwork, and you have a drawing, the camera can look at it. It can't go around it.
So the volume, you mean the idea of the volume?
Yeah, so because it's art, you can photograph art, it's two-dimensional, it's not three. So when we moved into digital, into CG animation, it became three-dimensional, and therefore I can move the camera around it. That gave the animation filmmaker the ability to make a film using a lot of live-action techniques of camera movement, and very freeing. I'm hoping, and I do hope, that we appreciate and we make films in all of these different mediums, of which for animation, stop motion, puppets just moving one frame at a time, hand-drawn, and CGI. And I am hoping that when filmmakers put together a movie, they look at it and go, what would be the best way to tell this story? What's the best technique that I can use to bring this film to the screen? At the moment, of course, it's all, well, a few years ago it was CGI, but nobody this morning asked me about 3D, which is optical, which is the glasses, which I saw as fantastic, and certain films are wonderful in 3D. But the idea that we need to watch a film wearing glasses, that's gone. That's gone. You go with a bunch of you to the cinema, and one of you says, I feel sick. Mm-hmm. Somebody else says, well, it's so much more expensive, And so it was very interesting, and certainly there are some films that are wildly enhanced by that experience of 3D, but not for everyone. It just becomes a tool in the filmmaker's box. And I think that of all the different animation techniques, they're different techniques that you can use to tell a story. Pick the best one.
Now, to conclude this interview, your workshop is, so you want to be a producer. Let's say I want to be a producer. What advice would you give me?
Well, I have two cheeky slides that I put up. The first one is there are three things that you need. Story, story, story. So, and that's my basis of that. If you can get the story right, you can make the film great. If you don't get the story right, no matter how beautifully you do it, it can't be great. We react to the story. And the other one is money. money, money, money. You've got to find it. You've got to have that ability to have the balance, and it's that. And then you've got to celebrate. I talk about, the job of the producer, and I talk about this in the same way that when somebody pitches me an idea for a movie, they need to be able to describe it in very few words. I can't read the whole script. I will later, but just tell me what it's about. And they should be able to tell me something, and I should be able to go, wow, that's fantastic. So what I say, I should be able to describe the role of the producer in the same way. So this is what I say, is that the job of the producer is to balance the creative vision with the resources. So the creative vision is the script and the premise for the whole thing. And the resources is the money. And there's never enough money, and there's never enough time. And I've made movies that have cost a few $1 million to $100 million. I worked on very big films and very small films. I've never heard anybody with a big budget say they had enough time and not have enough money. So the secret to being a producer, it's how you use the time, and it's how you spend the money. And it's celebrating what you do have as opposed to what you don't have. And I talked a lot about, analyze the script, make sure you can afford to make the script. You can't kid yourself, but what resources you have, get with the director, get with the team, and collectively figure out the most effective way of spending the money. So every penny, every bit of money is on the screen. It's not wasted. You reserve money for the expensive shots. So every movie is not the same, shot to shot to shot. They change and analyze the movie, but do it with a team. Get everybody on board and spend it wisely and say, we've got this amount of money, we've got this amount of time, let's spend it together.
Well, thank you for this overview. It was a real pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much, my pleasure.
That was Max Howard, a movie producer. We're at the Kyiv Media Week 2018. Thank you for watching the program, and stay tuned for the rest.